I think that's where it stops. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amen. So from that, we can understand that he didn't come from a really wealthy. Right. Right. Which further identifies with most of society, most of the wealth, most of us on the earth. We're not wealthy. But before you read, I want to read. Okay. I'm going to read Leviticus 12:8. I think this ties into what you just read. It says, "And if she be not able to bring a lamb," this is coming from Leviticus, this is their laws. "If she not be able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring two turtles or two young pigeons, one of them for the burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean." So they still follow the Bible. Okay? They still follow the Bible, but they weren't able to bring the lamb. Yes, ma'am. That was a rebuke right there. Basically, what they were saying is, Jesus and John the Baptist didn't go to the school of prophets. They didn't go there. They learned on their own. And so they weren't readily accepted because they didn't go, in modern day vernacular, they didn't go to Andrews University or Oakwood, Absolutely. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The carpenter's son. Mm-hmm. 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 Right. 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 And we know how you were born too. We know a little bit. You're still shaky on that. Right. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been to many a church, and before someone gets up to speak, they'll read their entire resume, as if that's the qualification, right? And it is. And the danger of that is you can be led away like that. Absolutely. Mm-mm. And oftentimes, who does God use? I mean, other disciples, yes, there was Dr. Luke, there was. And when you look throughout the history of the Christian church, there were those that were educated. Martin Luther was educated. Zwingli was. But Paul, humbled, majorly humbled. "40 years." Right, right. So this really speaks to us. And then, um, the prophet, third grade education. Third grade. Okay. Mm-hmm. Two men. Right. And treated. Right. And so the Lord said, I'm going to give it to the weakest of the weak. That's a good point. It says, Joseph and Mary's purification offering clearly indicated their economically poor background. I think this is important, because if he didn't come from a poor background, then how could he identify with us? If he came in as a rich ruler, whatnot, how could he identify with us? Then that would invalidate Hebrews 4:15, right? Because we could say, well, look, you never had to deal with this. You never had to deal with that. It says, this tradition sprang from the Mosaic legislation recorded in Leviticus 12:8. It required that a lamb be brought for this offering. However, a compassion exemption had been provided for impoverished people. Turtle doves or pigeons could be substituted because of humble circumstances. Thus, right from the start, from his birth in a stable to the offerings given by his parents, Jesus is portrayed as having assumed his humanity in the home of poor and ordinary people. In fact, archaeological evidence also seems to indicate that the town of Nazareth, where Jesus spent his childhood, was a relatively impoverished and unimportant town as well. And though carpentry was an honorable trade, it certainly didn't place him among the elite. The parents of Jesus were poor and dependent upon daily toil. He was familiar with poverty, self-denial, and privation. This experience was a safeguard to him. In his industrious life, there was no idle moments to invite temptation. No aimless hours opened the way for corrupting associations. So far as possible, he closed the door to the tempter. Neither gain nor pleasure, applause nor censure could induce him to consent to a wrong act. He was wise to discern evil and strong to resist it. Okay. Literally. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. 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 Being he's affluent, and so he's morning. Yeah. That's the world we live in. It's unfortunate. Just kind of it's interesting how we get from the Old Testament idea of wealth to where we are now. You look at Abraham and Job. These men were considered wealthy, but their wealth was measured in sheep and herds. But by the time you get to the Christ time, the measure of wealth was coin. Isn't that right? And it's kind of interesting when you look at that and read about that, how it changed, even to us now. The measure of wealth is a little bit of land and real estate, but more of coin, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all these things that can't work. And we're coming to a time where that won't be considered anymore. Just a side note. Fragile economically. Right. And every time they increase that debt ceiling and they have to print out more money, that money becomes more worthless, because the more and more you have of it, the less value it is. What's scarce is what's valuable. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's a note. It's a piece of paper. Okay, and read this next little part down here. It says, the creator of all that was made entered humanity not just as a human being, an infant, which would have been astonishing enough, but by the way of home of a relatively impoverished family. How are we to respond to something so incredible? What is the only way to respond? That was an interesting question. But it is it's worthy of thought. I mean, he entered not only the world as being poor, but as a child. I mean, helpless and poor. Mm-hmm. 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 Absolutely. Right. Okay. Okay. But he identifies with us. He identifies. And we identify. Transforming the common. Let's move to Monday, February 3rd. Okay. I just want to point this out right now, especially for people who are watching online. When you look at the juice or the wine, the Hebrews didn't have another word for grape juice. Okay? New wine. Okay, so we may make that clear, because I've had discussions with people telling me, well, he changed the water into wine. Well, that's not exactly true. Right. Right. It sat too long. Yeah. But he just made it, so it must not. No. It's good old grape juice. I'll leave that alone. Okay, so John chapter. Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. In other words, you can get the same benefits from drinking grape juice. Same iron. Absolutely. Hmm. The sugar. The sugar. It helps. Orange juice does too. Yeah. I'm going to read John chapter 2. Okay, 2 to 11. Actually, let's just discuss this real quick. Okay, so this is where he changed the grape juice, right? Okay, this is in fact this is Christ's first miracle, and mhm. Oh yeah. Hmm. On John, okay, I'm going to read it. Hmm. 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 And it also showed he cared about that service as well. Hmm. Hmm.